Have you ever noticed how the moments you defend yourself most fiercely are the very moments you feel the weakest? The louder we justify our existence, the more it trembles beneath us. You can almost feel it, this invisible tension that builds every time someone questions you, misunderstands you, or simply doesn't see you the way you wish to be seen. You feel the armor tighten. You begin to explain, to prove, to fight for your place in a world that never asked for proof. But what if that entire struggle was the illusion? What if the need to defend yourself was the very thing keeping you from realizing how vast you already are? There's a world of difference between appropriate action and desperate defense. Most people spend their lives mistaking one for the other. When you truly understand that there is no separate self to protect, you become like water, fluid, unresisting, yet unstoppable. Water never argues with the rocks in its path. It doesn't lecture the mountain for standing in its way. It flows around, over and through, and in doing so, it reshapes everything it touches. Humanity forgot how to flow. We built our identities like fortresses and then wondered why life feels like a siege. Every time you defend yourself, you are quietly confirming that there's something fragile within you that needs protection. You reinforce the illusion of separation, the ancient lie that you are an isolated ego in a hostile universe. And so you tighten your fists against the wind, exhausting yourself trying to hold the ocean in a teacup. What would happen if you simply didn't take the bait? If someone criticized you, and instead of reacting with fire, you listened with curiosity? Imagine hearing their words not as daggers aimed at your soul, but as waves moving through the same ocean you belong to. I once knew a woman who spent her entire life explaining herself to others. Every decision, every preference, every instinct had to be justified. She lived as if she were on trial before an invisible jury in her mind. She was brilliant and kind, but always tired. Tired of proving she was good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. Then one day she realized something extraordinary. No one was actually judging her. The courtroom existed only in her imagination. The accusations were ghosts of her own making. And the moment she stopped defending herself, the world stopped attacking her. It wasn't that people had changed. It was that she had become like the sky, vast, open, untroubled by the weather that moved through it. Most of what we call attack is simply other people expressing their own confusion. They don't know who they are, so they try to define themselves by defining you. The man who calls you lazy fears his own stillness. The woman who calls you selfish is drowning in guilt over her own needs. The critic who mocks your path is terrified of his own unrealized potential. When you take these projections personally, you enter a dance of mutual delusion, a tragic play where both characters forget they're actors on the same stage. What would happen if you stepped out of that dance entirely? If you refused to play the game of attack and defense? This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you recognize that true power doesn't come from building walls, but from having none to defend. True confidence isn't an armor, it's transparency. When you have nothing to hide, nothing to protect, you move through the world like light passing through glass. The harder you try to protect your image, your reputation, your sense of self, the more fragile you become. It's like trying to carry water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. When you release the need to control how others see you, something remarkable happens. You discover that you are already whole. The validation you chase adds nothing to what you already are. The respect you demand cannot increase your worth. You were complete before the first opinion ever formed about you. There's an old story of a master accused of fathering a child. The villagers came in anger, demanding justice. The master only said, "Is that so?" and took the child to raise as his own. Years later, the truth came out. The real father was found. The villagers returned, full of apology and admiration. Again, the master said, "Is that so?" He wasn't cold, he was free. He had nothing to defend and nothing to prove, because what he was could not be touched by accusation or praise. That is the freedom of consciousness, the freedom of knowing that you are the awareness behind every opinion, not the opinion itself. When you stop defending yourself, you also stop attacking others, because you finally understand there is no other. The person who annoys you, who challenges you, who seems to oppose you, is another wave in the same ocean of consciousness. To attack them is to strike the water and wonder why your own hand stings. The mystics have always known this. They speak of a unity that underlies every apparent difference, a divine consciousness wearing infinite masks. Most humans are lost in the drama, believing their mask is the only real face. But when you awaken, you begin to see the play for what it is. You can still participate. You can laugh, cry, love, and fight. But now you do it with awareness. You become the actor who knows he's on stage. You can play the hero or the villain, but you never forget that it's a performance, a dance of cosmic energy exploring itself through you. And yet the mind protests. It says, if I stop defending myself, won't people walk all over me? Won't injustice win? That's the fear of the ego pretending to be moral outrage. There's a difference between defending the ego and responding to truth. When you stop defending, you don't become passive, you become intelligent. You act from clarity, not reactivity. You correct lies not to protect your reputation, but because truth serves the whole better than falsehood. You intervene in harm not to satisfy your pride, but because compassion requires movement. You act without hatred. You protect without armor. You respond without rage. This is the way of the inner warrior. The reactor acts from fear. The warrior acts from understanding. The reactor tries to control the world. The warrior moves with it. The reactor builds walls. The warrior becomes space. And what is space? It is the ultimate invulnerability. It cannot be broken, stained, or wounded. It allows everything to pass through without resistance. And in that surrender lies its power. Most of what we think we must defend against isn't even real. The imagined conversations, the silent judgments, the what will they think theater that plays endlessly in our minds, we live trapped inside mental courtrooms, arguing cases that never existed, and the verdict is always the same, guilty of being human. But even when someone actually criticizes you, even when their intent is to hurt or humiliate, your refusal to defend makes their attack powerless. If you throw a ball at a wall, it bounces back. But if you throw it into open space, it simply disappears. When you stop being the wall, when you become the sky, the attack has nowhere to land. That's not weakness, that's transcendence. The sky doesn't need to fight the storm. It simply holds it until it passes. The ocean doesn't struggle with the waves. It is the waves. When you stop defending yourself, you stop vibrating at the frequency of conflict. You become silence in a world addicted to noise. And that silence is not absence. It is presence, the pure awareness before thought. When you reach this place, something subtle but profound begins to happen. People feel different around you. They sense a calm they can't explain, an ease that disarms their aggression. They start to soften without knowing why. Because when you no longer defend, you give them permission to stop attacking. You become a mirror in which they glimpse their own stillness, their own forgotten peace. Most humans are exhausted by their own armor, desperate for one moment of rest. When you stand before them unarmored, it's like standing before a quiet forest after years in the city. Your stillness reminds them that there is another way to exist, a way that doesn't require constant struggle. And even if they can't name it, they feel it. They breathe a little deeper. They lower their voice. They remember for a flicker of a second what it means to simply be. And in that moment, you've already begun to change the world, not by argument, not by force, but by presence. When you stop defending yourself, you create a silence that confuses the old machinery of the human mind. The ego doesn't know what to do when it's not being fed by resistance. It looks for friction to define itself, and when you offer none, it begins to dissolve. The absence of defense is not a weakness. It is the beginning of seeing clearly. In that stillness, you realize how much of your life has been spent reacting to shadows, mistaking echoes for enemies. The moment you stop fighting ghosts, the whole haunted house collapses. Most of the suffering people carry is not born from the world, but from interpretation. Someone frowns, and we build a novel out of their expression. Someone forgets to call, and we write a tragedy. The mind's imagination can be cruel when it's driven by fear. And so we defend our stories as if they were truth. But life is not the story we tell about it. It's the raw, unfolding mystery that refuses to be caged by narrative. To live defenselessly is to live in direct contact with that mystery. There is an exquisite courage in vulnerability, a power that terrifies those who still believe strength means hardness. The softest element in the world is water, yet nothing can resist it. In the same way, the softest hearts often hold the greatest force. When you stop pretending to be invulnerable, you become indestructible, because you are no longer playing the same game. You are not defending the mask, you are living from the core. Sometimes this shift happens quietly, almost imperceptibly. You notice yourself no longer explaining every decision. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. You let people have their opinions, and you keep your energy for creation rather than correction. That's how awakening begins. Not with fireworks, but with the subtle recognition that peace is more important than winning. But make no mistake, the world will test this peace. It will send critics, doubters, provocateurs. They are not obstacles, they are invitations to see if you truly understand what cannot be touched. Every judgment, every misunderstanding is a small mirror held before you, asking, will you react or will you remain? And every time you choose to remain, the illusion of separation cracks a little more. To live this way is to walk through the marketplace with your heart unarmored. It's to stand in the noise and chaos of human drama and remember that all of it is happening within you, not to you. You begin to see the play of consciousness in everything, the anger of others, the praise, the confusion, the longing. You see it all as waves returning to the same shore. You realize that the universe is not against you. It is speaking to you in every form, testing whether you can recognize yourself behind every mask it wears. And yet, to the unawakened eye, this stillness can look strange. People may call it detachment or indifference because they cannot imagine love without possession or strength without struggle. But you will know the difference because your peace will no longer depend on their understanding. When you stop defending yourself, you stop demanding that others validate your existence. You no longer need them to agree for you to feel real. That is the beginning of true autonomy, the birth of a self that doesn't require an audience. There's an ancient intelligence that begins to move through you when you stop living from fear. You start responding to life the way nature does, spontaneous, precise, effortless. Trees don't argue about where to grow. Rivers don't explain their direction. They follow the invisible law of their own being. You have such a law, but it's buried under layers of defense and doubt. Once the armor falls away, that inner guidance becomes unmistakable. You begin to act, speak, and move in harmony with something greater than thought, and still, there will be moments when the old reflex returns. The sudden urge to explain, to justify, to prove. Notice it without judgment. That reflex is just a ghost from another lifetime, whispering that you must earn your right to exist. Smile at it. Let it pass. Every time you resist the urge to defend, you strengthen the understanding that you never needed to. Every moment of awareness rewires the ancient habit of separation. Imagine if humanity as a whole stopped defending itself. Nations, religions, ideologies, all built on the fear of being wrong, all terrified of losing face. What would remain if we dropped the need to protect our collective egos? Maybe we'd finally hear each other. Maybe we'd remember that we are the same species dreaming different dreams. The wars we fight on the outside are just the visible expression of the wars inside our minds. End the inner war and the outer ones lose their fuel. Defenselessness is not the end of power. It is its refinement. It's the difference between a sword and light. One cuts, the other illuminates. When you operate from clarity, your presence itself becomes transformative. You don't need to argue. You are the evidence. People will feel your truth before they understand it. You'll notice that some are drawn closer while others pull away, and you will no longer take either as a personal victory or loss. You'll see it all as energy rearranging itself according to resonance. When you stop defending, your perception sharpens. You begin to see how much of human communication is theater. People not talking to understand, but to be right. You'll watch arguments unfold and realize that beneath every raised voice is a frightened child pleading, "Please don't make me wrong." Once you see that, compassion replaces anger. You no longer want to win. You want to heal. You don't want to dominate. You want to understand. That's what real maturity looks like. Not the accumulation of control, but the release of it. The ego thrives on boundaries, on me versus you. It feeds on comparison. It is terrified of silence because silence reveals its unreality. When you drop your defenses, you expose the ego's greatest fear, transparency. But beyond that fear lies liberation. You discover that you are not a fragment of the world. You are the world looking at itself. You are the eye through which the cosmos becomes aware of its own beauty. There comes a moment when you look back and realize how much energy was wasted trying to manage perception, constructing images, editing emotions, hiding imperfections. All that energy, once trapped in maintenance, becomes available for creation. You start to write, paint, speak, build, not to prove anything, but because expression is the natural overflow of freedom. Stop trying to be impressive and start being real. And that reality, raw and unpolished, radiates a beauty no performance can match. Sometimes people will misinterpret your piece. They will assume you don't care because they cannot imagine caring without control. But your care will be deeper now, like gravity, invisible yet inescapable. You'll care for the world the way the sun cares for life, by shining, not by arguing with the darkness. And in that light, something miraculous happens. The line between you and the world begins to blur. The old sense of me defending against them dissolves. You realize that what you once called others are just reflections of the same awareness exploring itself through different faces. You don't need to forgive them because there's nothing left to forgive. You just see through the dream of separation. And that vision changes everything. Living without defense doesn't make life easier. It makes it real. The highs and lows still come, but they move through you without leaving scars. Pain visits, but it doesn't become suffering. Praise arrives, but it doesn't become pride. You start to taste the subtle sweetness of existence itself, unfiltered by fear or need. That is the quiet revolution of consciousness, to live open in a world that teaches you to hide. And if you listen closely, beneath the noise of thought, you can hear it, the hum of something vast, infinite, and familiar. It's the same intelligence that turns galaxies, that breathes your lungs, that beats your heart without permission. It whispers, you were never meant to be defended. You were meant to be known. When you are finally known, not by the world, but by yourself, a strange calm descends. It is not joy in the ordinary sense. It's quieter, deeper, like standing in the ocean at midnight, realizing the waves have always been speaking your name. You start to see that every experience, even the painful ones, were secret teachers preparing you for this moment of recognition. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every silence was a lesson in remembering the truth of what cannot be lost. When you live from this knowing, life stops being a negotiation. You are no longer trying to bargain your way into happiness. You stop chasing what's running away from you and begin magnetizing what belongs to your frequency. You become the center, not the seeker. And in that stillness, you see how much of human life is built around chasing reflections. Everyone is running after echoes, titles, approval, money, romance, believing the next thing will complete them. But completion is not in things, it's in being. The moment you are at peace with yourself, everything external becomes play, not prison. People often ask, how do I find purpose? But purpose is not found, it's remembered. It's the echo of the original intention of your soul before you were distracted by survival. It whispers through your curiosities, your fascinations, the strange little obsessions that make you come alive. But most of us are too busy surviving to listen. The world teaches us to be efficient, not awake, to be successful, not sincere. Yet the soul cannot thrive in the currency of imitation. It needs authenticity the way lungs need oxygen. When you begin living from that authenticity, the universe rearranges itself around you. Opportunities that felt distant start showing up without force. Synchronicities multiply. The people you meet feel like mirrors rather than strangers. That's because you've stopped vibrating at the frequency of fear and started broadcasting the signal of alignment. Life, at its deepest level, is not random, it's responsive. The energy you carry is a command to the universe, and when that command is love instead of lack, creation itself listens. Still, this shift will isolate you at first, because awakening is not glamorous, it's dismantling. You will lose identities that once felt essential. Friendships built on shared illusions will fade. The more you see truth, the less you can participate in falseness. But loneliness is not the punishment, it's the purification. It's the sacred clearing where your true tribe can finally find you. The ones who vibrate at your level of honesty don't appear until the noise has left your life. So if you are alone, it only means the transmission is still tuning. Wait, trust the silence. It's composing your next chapter. There will come days when the old patterns whisper again, be smaller, be careful, fit in. Those voices are ghosts from a dying world. The system depends on your self-doubt because a confident soul cannot be controlled. But you are no longer a product of fear. You are an agent of awareness. And awareness has no master. It bends to no authority. It moves with the same intelligence that turns galaxies. It needs no permission to exist. As this truth deepens, you start noticing that even pain transforms. It doesn't disappear. It becomes transparent. You see through it. You realize that suffering is not the enemy of growth. It's the sculptor of depth. Without darkness, light would have no texture. Without confusion, wisdom would have no flavor. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? And suddenly, everything that once broke you becomes a kind of initiation, a secret handshake with evolution itself. You begin to understand that awakening is not about escaping the world. It's about engaging it more truthfully. It's not withdrawal. It's intimacy. The more awake you are, the more vividly you feel everything. The pain of the world, the joy, the absurdity. You realize that to be fully conscious is to be exquisitely sensitive. And in that sensitivity, compassion becomes your natural state. You no longer seek to fix the world because you see that the world was never broken, only misunderstood. It is a living process, not a static picture. This realization changes the way you relate to time. The future stops being a place you're rushing toward. The past stops being a cage. You start to sense that all of it, memory, imagination now, is one fluid movement. You see that eternity is not endless duration, it's the depth of this moment, right here, right now. You feel it in your breath, in the pulse of the air, and the way light moves across your hands. The infinite was never somewhere else. It was always hiding inside the ordinary. And as this perception stabilizes, something miraculous happens. The fear of death begins to dissolve. You understand that death is not the opposite of life. It's the recycling of form. Life does not end, it transforms. The body falls away like a leaf, but the tree remains. Consciousness does not die, it changes frequency. What we call endings are just doorways between dimensions of experience. Once you grasp this, anxiety loses its grip. You live fully because you no longer cling. You give freely because you no longer hoard. You love without demand because you no longer fear loss. Every great awakening in history began in one person's nervous system. Buddha under a tree, Christ in the desert, McKenna in the jungle, Watts in solitude. They all touched the same silence and realized the kingdom of heaven is consciousness itself. You are that same potential. The myth that enlightenment is reserved for saints and sages is a lie told by those afraid of their own power. Awakening is not elitist, it's evolutionary. It's what the universe is trying to do through you, but to live that awakening requires courage, not the kind that conquers, but the kind that surrenders. The bravery to let go of who you think you are, the audacity to trust the invisible, the willingness to walk blindfolded into transformation. Society will tell you this is madness, but what they call madness is often sanity in disguise. The ones who see differently are always labeled strange until the world catches up. And the world will catch up because consciousness is contagious. One person living authentically can shift the atmosphere of an entire room. One soul anchored in truth can rewrite the field around them. That's why your awakening matters, not because it makes you special, but because it makes you a transmitter of coherence in a world drowning in noise. Every act of presence is a revolution. Every moment you choose awareness over reaction. You tilt the timeline toward clarity. You'll start to see the hidden architecture of things, the patterns, the synchronicities, the invisible threads that tie events together. You'll sense when something is meant for you not through logic, but resonance. You'll feel it in your bones. The universe speaks in feelings long before it speaks in facts. And when you trust that language, life becomes a collaboration rather than a contest. You don't chase, you align. He breathes through all beginnings and ends alike. And with that smile, something subtle shifts in how you live. You become simpler. You eat when hungry, rest when tired, speak when truth moves through you. The compulsion to impress, to control, to predict, it falls away like old skin. You start finding beauty in the most unexpected places, the sound of rain on metal, the texture of silence between words, the fleeting glance of a stranger that feels like eternity passing by. Every ordinary thing becomes a portal. In this state, service becomes natural. You don't serve out of duty. You serve because creation itself wants to serve through you. A kind word to a stranger, a moment of listening, a gesture of care. These are the ripples that change timelines. The smallest act of genuine awareness can echo across the collective mind. You begin to see that enlightenment isn't retreating from the world. It's embracing it so completely that separation dissolves. To wash a dish is to polish a star. To breathe consciously is to pray. To touch another being with presence is to participate in the divine experiment called love. And slowly, you begin to sense the universe watching you back. It's subtle at first, a glimmer in coincidences, a rhythm in how events unfold, but then it becomes undeniable. Reality starts responding like an intimate partner, finishing your sentences, meeting your needs before you articulate them. You realize you are not living in the universe, you are in conversation with it. Every choice, every feeling, every whisper of intention is answered. Creation is not a stage, it's a dialogue, and your words are spells that shape its tone. The final surrender happens when you no longer ask life to be different. Acceptance ceases to be resignation and becomes ecstasy. You stop negotiating with what is and begin dancing with it. You see that resistance was the only source of suffering, and in its absence, everything, even pain, radiates peace. You don't escape the world. You embrace it so completely that nothing is outside the circle of love. And here, at the silent center of all movement, a new understanding dawns. The universe has never been searching for perfection. It has been searching for participation. It doesn't want saints or heroes. It wants partners in creation. Conscious beings who can look at chaos and see possibility, who can take the raw material of existence, fear, joy, time, matter, and sculpt meaning out of it. That's the real purpose of awakening, not to ascend away from life, but to become an artist of reality itself. You were never meant to fit into the world. You were meant to remake it by the light of your awareness. Every thought is a brushstroke, every choice a note in the cosmic symphony. When you realize this, life stops being survival and becomes art. You are not the victim of fate, you are the composer of frequency. So you breathe deeply, consciously, and you feel the pulse of eternity beating in your chest. You look around at the faces, the stars, the infinite reflections, and you whisper the only truth that matters. I was never separate. I was never lost. I was never less than the whole. And the universe answers through wind and silence, through laughter and tears. Welcome home.